Hey everyone, we're on to night two for budget meeting. I know that tonight a lot of people are thinking of floods and Evil Dam collapsing, possibly Sanford Dam collapsing. That could all come up all the way through Bay City and cause a lot of havoc. Hopefully everyone stays safe and we're able to get through this, as it's another thing that 2020 is throwing at us and we're just loving it, unfortunately. Um, Things that were on the budget agenda tonight, I was going through the general fund. So this is the general operations to keep the city functional at a minimal level. This is like your assessor, your treasurer, all these the clerk's department, the manager's office, all the things that are bare minimums for a city to function, we're gone over today. I have some notes from today. The first one is that the state revenue sharing numbers were officially released, and the ones that were in the budget were about 8% too optimistic. It's about $190,000 that the city was expected to get, they will now not be getting. It means there will be cuts from the papers that were shown, but where those be is unknown right now. Next was in the mayor and city commission areas, there were marks for about $1,000 of total value added for each position, or each elected position. Now, I can remember when I was on the charter commission, I was one of the main members to try to reduce the number of commissioners on the city commission, as we are the only town in Michigan with less than 100,000 people that has more than 7 total elected positions. We have 10. No one's even close to that in our size range. We are also have some of the highest paid part-time commissioners in the state for any city, and that's something that I also wanted to change, and it's looking like we're not going to be doing that now. They explained the increase for benefits as increased costs for Michigan Municipal League conferences. Now, those are training conferences for these commissioners to make sure they understand terminology and how the system that's in place actually works so that they can make better decisions. Now, there was also a cash raise, actual salary raise, for both the commission and the mayor that is set into the budget currently. It'd be only a couple $1,000s total, but it's more on principle than on anything else. They explained it as because of how the meetings are set now and how the new system from the charter would be used for attendance, is that it increased the cost and it would be a zero effect. But from what I remember from the charter sessions, that's a load of crap. The city does not hold extra meetings. The commissioners still pay based off of their 2 meetings per month. That number has not changed. So that 2 meetings per month is still in effect for the same amount of money. And the only difference is that if they do not show, they would only get half of that money. That means you'd save money in the long term, but you can't account for people not showing to meetings. So it has to be that the increase is not for that, unless there's something they're totally missing. That is not how that works. That is no way that is how that works. Speaking of the charter, there was a mention of decreased revenue for the sidewalk, and I just want everyone to know that the city wanted to keep it. If the city wanted to keep their sidewalk fund, they still could, by reprioritizing other items in the city budget. Originally, if you remember back when the state announced the cities could charge, or municipalities, not just cities, could charge 1% fee for collection to cover paperwork. That did not go over well with the city. A lot of people went up and complained to the city commission at the time, and they made an adjustment that allowed them to, we're going to allocate this money towards something else and cover the cost elsewhere. Well, that extra money that they came in, now they're staying with the sidewalk fund. But it was never exclusively able to go towards sidewalks because you can't actually, per state law, earmark that for another project. So they were essentially taking $300,000 out of elsewhere in the budget and moving it into the sidewalk fund. So they could still be doing that in theory, although with less money. But the city passed this new charter, and the one major change that a lot of people I talked to were really excited about, that the fee that they didn't think they needed to be charged in the first place was now gone, because they saw no positive effect from it in their areas, and they figured that the reason for it was weak to begin with. On to elections, trying to follow the same thing here. Election budget was originally going to be down about $25,000 this year over last year, even with a big general election in November. That presidential election cost a lot more. They cost a lot more. But because of reimbursements that come in from county and state, because a lot of the functions go hand in hand so they can reduce costs that way, the national election actually ended up costing less for the city of Bay City. Now, that was all fine and dandy up until about noon today, when the Attorney General of Michigan, Dana Nessel, made an announcement that Michigan will be increasing voter participation by making sure that every registered voter in the state of Michigan receives an absentee ballot application for both the August and November elections. That's a big move for voter access in the state of Michigan, and I think that's a great thing. We need to make sure people have access to vote, because we don't know what's going to be happening in November. We could be over the COVID-19 issue, but we could also be in a second wave. And because of that uncertainty, and because more voter access means more liberty for the citizens of Michigan, I believe that is a good way for us to go. Now, as for cost to the city, that announcement unfortunately had no clues as to what costs would be. So cost reimbursements to the city could be zero, and that means a large increase in postage, mostly for the city-based city, and specifically the clerk's department for elections. Now, that could be changing, but that's going to be something that they have no idea, and it's less than 2 months when the budget needs to be passed. So the election budget is going to want to keep an eye on just to see what's going on. Next on the budget was, if you looked at the budget at all, you may notice other services varied wildly from last year. A lot of them went up, a few of them went down, and per Finance Director Martini, Mr. Martini today, he said that most of that is due to adjustments for information technologies, IT costs. Most departments that saw increases saw it because their costs associated with data storage and security increased. The city's cost for that has gone up, and that is an uncontrollable cost. And at this point, it's not one that they can say, hold up, we're just going to not pay it, because there is a level of security the city needs to have for that to make sure that items don't get leaked that shouldn't get leaked, that are actually classified information for the city. That's important. Plus, it's to ensure that people from outside can't come in and hijack the city systems. We have seen, over the last few years, a good portion of municipalities that have ended up getting locked out and then either paying a ransom or just starting everything from scratch, losing months or years of data. And this city basically prioritizes not wanting to do that. And that's a good thing, because losing the city's data would be bad for everyone who lives here. But on the other side, there were a few departments that saw the costs decrease, and that's from the billing system. Now, that old billing system, everyone remembers the big yellow sheets with your address and the bills, and it was something we'd had for like 30 years. That's gone. We have a new system. It's in place. It's been about 6 months now. Most of the kinks from it that were there when they started have been worked out, which is a big plus. But that was an expensive system. That was an in-house system built by someone who was trying to retire from the city now, and has, I believe, now actually retired. But that old billing system cost a lot of money to maintain because it was using so few applications now. The integration of the new billing system allowed the city to save a bunch of money, especially in finance departments. So there's a lot of money savings that we got from switching to the new system. Other things that were noted, there are four major items in this general fund that received money from the general fund to help cover losses that did not make the rest of the year. Those four things are Liberty Harbor Marina, which this is getting about $16,000 from the city to maintain operations. James Clements Airport, which is getting just under $67,000 for operations above and beyond what it pulls in. $101,000 to Oak Ridge Cemetery. Now, Oak Ridge Cemetery, if I remember correctly, is at capacity. So that is just to maintain the ground as is. That is becoming an expensive undertaking by the city, and without much of an endowment to it, the city will continue to have this cost for an infinite amount of time. They're always looking for volunteers. They're always looking for cash assistance, and it's evident that they are not getting enough right now. The other one is new this year. Another Sixth Ward item. It's middle ground pollution remediation. Now, the city, a long time ago, before my time, there was a dump on the island. That's a problem. Having a dump right next to water in an area that was unsealed, where it just literally could slide into the river, wasn't smart to begin with. And back then, a lot of people didn't think it was smart anyway, but it was done. And now it's coming home to roost. The city is now having to pay above and beyond what they're getting from the state and federal agencies to cover remediation, and that is $145,000. Actually, $145,884, so almost $146,000. That alone is more than Liberty and James Clements combined, and it's just for pollution cleanup from poor decisions from decades ago, and from cuts at state and federal levels for pollution remediation, mostly federal level for that, because that's a EPA Superfund site, and funding that's been just demolished. So that's a problem that city is now having to pay for. Thankfully, it's only $150,000 about this year, and hopefully it doesn't creep up more. But at this point, it's not looking. That's going to be a mark on the budget for until they finally figure out how to clean it up. The last point I have is they mentioned at the end of the meeting that there is an increase in city attorney costs for about $20,000. That $20,000, according to what was said at the meeting, almost goes exclusively to a current issue that the city is dealing with for AT&T. But they could not discuss any more, probably because there is a lawsuit or a pending lawsuit either against the city or against AT&T. There is no information for that possible legal issue out there, but whatever it is, it's costing the city attorney's office an expected $20,000 extra for extra time for legal assistance. That's not great. I'd like to know what that is, and obviously they can't say it right now, but that item could be something to just look out for in MLive over the next year, just to see what happens. But that's what we got for tonight. They said they're going to be another meeting next Tuesday, or at least they said next week. I'm going to assume it's next Tuesday. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Ask you, me, assume. But we'll see. So thanks everyone for what's going on, and if you have questions, just page, get account of the Bay City. Just doing my best here.